So we already work with some pretty leading names, so the likes of Monzo, Monese, and Curve, and our role really is helping them maximize that use of sort of the Google software. And this is something we want to replicate in the North, and something I'm really keen and passionate to do. So that has been part of why we've put the webinar on today. Hopefully we'll be able to run a couple of these face-to-face, and we'll be able to meet you guys, and you'll be able to tell us if our sort of statement of we've got more Google than Google offices is actually true. But this is kind of forming the basis for today, really, to make that connection, introduce you guys to Google, and sort of work in partnership to sort of develop those connections going forward. With all that in mind, I'm now going to hand over and sort of introduce Rich and Egbert from the Google team, who are going to sort of walk through what their vision is in fintech, some of the work they do, and sort of some of the things coming from Google Cloud in the fintech industry. So Rich and Egbert, I'll hand over to you guys now.
Cool, thanks very much, Alistair. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Rich Asby. Between myself and Egbert, we look after fintech for the UK market for Google Cloud. We're super excited this morning to be talking to you a little bit about what we're doing for Google in the fintech space. So if you can move to the next slide, please, Alistair. Thank you. So what is fintech to Google Cloud? Well, we see it as a huge opportunity, really. Google Cloud is all about sort of solving problems. Whatever the industry, we look to solve real business problems with our world-class technology, much like what fintechs are trying to achieve. A lot of fintechs are trying to solve problems in financials industry, such as faster payments or the retail banking customer experience. So we sort of see fintech as a huge opportunity to help solve these problems with an ecosystem of challenges that together are looking to sort of reinvent and disrupt a market that has seen little to no change for a number of years. So I'd like to start by just sort of giving a bit of background to Google Cloud and Google. So if you can move to the next slide. So Google have 9 cloud products with over 1 billion monthly active users. And you might be thinking, sort of, why is this relevant? Well, we like to think that a lot of the reason that Google got to this point was by putting the user at the heart of everything that we do, as well as being a data-led company, just like a lot of modern-day sort of fintechs. By putting the user at the heart of everything that we do, we believe that building the best experiences, along with solving some of the world's most complex problems, means that the users will then follow. So Google is and always has been a kind of data-led company. It will surprise you to know that it is not me and Egbert answering your search queries every time you put a query into Google search. So sort of putting data to work and gaining real valuable insights to make decisions is another reason that Google has got to where it is today. Also, I thought it was worth mentioning that Google is and has been a challenger in most of the markets that it's entered. So we weren't the first search engine. We didn't create the first sort of maps tracking app, and Android definitely wasn't the first phone operating system. So there's a lot of similarities here between what fintech is trying to achieve and what Google's been through. And Google Cloud is sort of the externalization of the infrastructure that these 9 products were built on. So we saw an opportunity to sort of externalize the infrastructure, the AI, the machine learning that we embed into our products. We saw an opportunity to productize that and use it in the market. So that's where Google Cloud was sort of born. If you move to the next slide, please. So how are we helping in fintech specifically? Well, Google Cloud's been active for a number of years now in the fintech community. We run sort of fintech meetups every 6 months, where we'll get some of our fintech customers to talk about how they're harnessing the power of Google to sort of solve their real business problems. The community aspect is really important to us, as we see sort of fintechs, as I mentioned, as an ecosystem of players that together can offer really valuable solutions to their customers, not only the consumers, but also maybe to some more of the sort of traditional financial institutions. If you go to the next slide. So what can Google Cloud do to help? Well, before Egbert goes into more detail around this, just at a sort of high level, a lot of companies are choosing to work with us because of our culture of innovation and our sort of genuine interest in our customers' projects and how we can approach them differently. Google Cloud sort of brings together the best of Google's products and services to create new user experiences and launch new products. Companies in every industry, not just fintech, are innovating using Google's technology and how we've integrated them into Google Cloud. And lastly, along with sort of industry experts, we have created industry-specific solutions, for example, in financial services, fraud detection or deepening customer relationships through analytics. And this kind of, the results of this is shown in the ever-growing list of companies that are choosing to partner with us, not just in startup and fintech, but across the enterprise as well, with the likes of HSBC and Lloyds in the UK. Can move to the next slide. So without wanting to throw too many logos at you, here's just a handful of the sort of publicly referenceable fintechs that we're helping solve problems with Google Cloud in the UK. And before I hand over to Egbert, I just kind of wanted to highlight that the message here is that we want to become the partner for cloud in fintech. We want to help you solve your business problems using Google's technologies and expertise, but deployed via our sort of extensive and specialist partner network through the likes of Netpremacy. So it's great to meet you all. Hopefully we can work together going forward. And I'll now hand over to Egbert, who's going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about how we're helping.
Great, thanks, Rich. Yes, so I'm Egbert IJsseldijk. I work for Google Cloud, focusing on fintech. So today I'll be talking a bit more about what makes cloud different in technology perspective, from a Google perspective. So we'll be touching 3 points. One is infrastructure, then we're going to multi-cloud / Anthos, and finally I'll be speaking about AI and ML. I won't be able to go deep dive into each of the sections, so if you would like to know more, feel free to go to our website. We've got a deep dive sessions there. Or feel free to reach out to Rich or myself or Alistair if you want to know more. So if we go to the next slide, we can have a high-level overview of what makes cloud different. So we got a couple of core principles. One of them is being that we believe in multi-cloud. So believing in multi-cloud means that we enable our customers and our users to make the decision what fits best for their organizations to run applications and the tech environment. So by default, we believe in open source. From a historical perspective, Google has developed solutions internally and then given back to the open source community. Thinking back about, for example, BigQuery, Hadoop is another example. Kubernetes is the latest one, and TensorFlow is the one as well for the last couple of years for AI and ML. Just a couple of examples of how we believe internally to innovate and then give it to the community and then collaborate together on how to best progress the solution. Further to that, we believe in the right resources for hardware and infrastructure. So if you go to the next slide, you can see an overview of our regions across the world. So at the moment, we have 22 regions, with more upcoming every year. I think around 3 or 4 new region opens every calendar year, and it's planned for the next couple of years. So on this map, you see a lot of blue dots. So the blue dots are data centers based across all our regions, and they are connected with their own private network. This is what makes Google Cloud unique, is that we control our own network and we lay the cables between the regions and continents. So obvious benefits is obviously latency. That's very quick. So if you think about YouTube, no matter where you are, you can load your videos very quickly. So as a Google Cloud customers, you'll be using the same network as, for example, YouTube. But furthermore, what's important for fintechs and financial services in general is the control on security. So it's a software-defined network. What it means is that we can control and you can control any traffic goes in and out. So if anything happens, you can very block suspicious users or networking for a specific region. And furthermore, all the networking and all the data and encryption is encrypted at rest by default. And then on the next slide, I'll be speaking more about a multi-cloud. So you might have heard about Anthos announcements last year at Next from our CEO Sundar when it was announced. So what Anthos actually is, it's based on kind of Kubernetes, but it's a software-defined tool that lets you develop your applications across clouds. So it includes Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, but also on-prem. And what it means is that you don't need to worry about where you deploy your applications. You only need to worry about how you write your applications and how to make the best user-friendly or approachable to your market. So that's the core belief around Anthos. And it also is beneficial for, let's say, if you're a fintech and you would like to deploy into new markets, you can easily manage the scalability or the usage of users in case one of the two clouds is not able to meet your capacity for that region. So there's also for that advantage as well, which is actually becoming very popular with FinServe because it's also driven by regulation at the moment to go multi-cloud. And as the Google Cloud is obviously open sourced, so that's also the pure principle to not have any vendor locked into the Anthos infrastructure. So if we go into the next one, I'll be going more into the AI and ML. And if you'd like to know more about Anthos, I recommend going to our Google Cloud YouTube channel. We have a proper deep dive sessions over there. We also demo on how it works and how you can run the applications on multi-cloud. So looking at AI, when you're going to work with AI, you kind of want to do two things, two buckets. You either want to use AI to drive revenue and explore new users or new revenue channels, or you want to save cost. So that's kind of the two main things you want to do. So if you go to the next slide, if you agreed on your use case internally on what you want to achieve with your data and what you want to get out of the AI, you kind of work on how you want to deploy. And when it comes to AI, the core hurdle is actually data collection and data usage. And this is where most organizations struggle, is they want to overcomplicate things with AML without focusing on the first stage, which actually is the data and proper definition of the use case. So it's one of the recommendations we recommend to a lot of organizations. Focus on the data first, make sure it's labeled, it's properly structured, and then go into AML. So when you go into the next slide, when you decide on your AI use case and how you want to deploy it, you kind of make a decision on how much control you want to have internally. So you might have a data scientist in your organization and you want to do a full custom TensorFlow model. That's fine. You can build the TensorFlow model and you can run it on Cloud AI on Google Cloud. Or you might be a smaller startup and you basically have a use case in mind. You got the data and you just want to deploy it as quick as possible. You can make use of our pre-trained models, which you can manipulate with your own customization. You can deploy very quickly and very easy. So examples of that are, for example, our Vision API, which can be used for detection of IDs, for example. That's being very popular now with Fintechs. You can do translation if you want to go to new markets. If you got the app in English, you can automatically translate it to other languages, let's say Spanish or Italian, or German, just to give you a couple examples. And speech is also becoming a popular one, where you want to control your app through speech, for example, or have speech-enabled applications as well. So if we go to the next one, there are a couple examples regarding AI and ML in FinServe and FinTech in general. So there's kind of 4 buckets, as you can see. The first one is accelerate growth with better insights. So this is how to make the best use of your data and data sources and how to gain better return on investments for, let's say, your marketing channels. So one of the benefits of Google Cloud is you got products like BigQuery, where you can have data insights from, let's say, Google Analytics, but also from third-party resources, let's say like Adobe Cloud, Salesforce, Facebook, etc. So you can have like a 360 omni-channel of your customer behavior and customer insights, and also your marketing spend. So it's really very powerful for organizations to have the best basically ads and also application developments to have the best usage and enablement. So you can see also other parts like a smart, seamless customer experience with other banks. So a good fintech example is Revolut. So this goes also into our Vision API example. Revolut is very well known, very easy to use for the users. You download the app, you sign up, and you can by using their ID identification with Works Vision API, you can be verified very quickly. So it literally takes a couple minutes, or maybe worst case, a couple hours, which is much quicker and much shorter time resolution than original banks. So it's really unique selling proposition for Revolut. But obviously this is just an example and it can be used for the use case as well. And then we also have, which has also become actually very driven in the last year or two, also the regulation is being proactive in looking for fraud detection and suspicious behavior. So with AI and ML, you can also proactively look at how cash is being flowed between your transactions and basically highlighting suspicious behavior and being proactive in flagging if something happened and resolve it appropriately. So it's been, for example, very popular with HSBC, and what's the primary reason why also they went for Google Cloud is because of power to analyze a lot of data very quickly, and they were able to resolve fraud way faster than they were in the past. And then we have the other obvious one, and that's agile and reduction. So it basically just looks into the user experience of the app, but also how to accelerate app development thanks to AI and ML. So AI and ML kind of gives recommendations on how your app is used. So if you look at apps from Google, all Google apps are AI first. What this means is that we have like AI-based recommendations on how the app looks, but also behaves depending on the user as well. So that's kind of just the high-level overview of our use cases regarding AI and ML. If you'd like to know more, please feel free to reach out to Rich and myself and/or Alistair. And also you can feel free to go to our website or on YouTube channel with more deep dive sessions as well. And then I would like to give the floor to Martin.
Yeah. Thanks. Cheers, Egbert. Thank you very much for that, and Rich as well. The one thing I kind of want to draw out of that piece before I hand over to Martin quickly is Google are kind of shaping themselves specifically for the sort of the fintech market. As Rich mentioned earlier, they're kind of building a team and want to be the go-to platform and provider for fintechs. And I think that's echoed by what Egbert's just gone through around all the different solutions they're providing, some of the different companies they're working with, but also some of the sort of leading names and logos. So like Revolut, Monzo, some of the biggest players are all sort of working on GCP and helping actually shape what those solutions look like, which is kind of great to see and great to be involved in as well from a partner perspective. I'm now going to hand over to Martin Russell, who is Netpremacy's Director of CSS. But Martin has a vast experience in sort of the tech industry, helping organizations grow. And we've asked him just to spend a bit of time going through the importance of strategy. I think it's great. Everyone's got a vision, but the importance of actually having a strategy behind that vision is equally as important. And that's what Martin's got a lot of experience in. So I'm going to hand over to Martin now, who's just going to run through a couple of slides and sort of walk you guys through that side. Over to you, Martin.
Cool. Thank you, Alistair, and good morning, everybody. Yeah, it's still morning. Good. Yes, if you want to jump onto the next slide for me, that would be awesome. Cool. So as I said, Martin Russell, I'm the Director of Customer Success at Netpremacy, and I've been around for about a year. Prior to that, this is the first time I've worked in the sort of services and supplier side of things. I've been in the enterprise space for the past 20 years, most notably Director of Technology for Just Eat and also for MetaPack in that retail space, but I've crossed into many areas in the past. And I've done sort of cloud journeys in both of those locations. Back in the early days when cloud was, very skeptical about what it's capable of and could we do it better ourselves, etc. Back in sort of 2012, and clearly, it's moved on an awful lot since then. To give you a quick bit of a story, when I was at Just Eat, when it was less than 100 people when I joined, it was 4,000 people when I left 7 years later, and has grown even since then. I attended one of these actually. I went to an on-site demonstration at Google, and I was the guy who was currently responsible for all of the tech within Just Eat around its its server infrastructure, network, and all the rest of it. And I actually went in my Microsoft t-shirt because I wasn't going to have anyone tell me they could do it better. I was the guy that built this stuff. I was the guy responsible, and I left there with a very different attitude in that, yes, could I have done some of the stuff that they were proposing? Probably, but I would need a much larger team. I would need a much larger budget. I would need all of these things. And actually, that wasn't what Just Eat was in business for, right? Just Eat was in business to build a great consumer experience around takeaway. It wasn't in business to run a bunch of services and tools to keep the lights on, right? And that was from that sort of, when I left there, that was a really sort of, clear imprint it left on me, in that we were in business to do this thing. And therefore, anything we do that isn't that is a distraction from that value creation. And therefore, we should make sure that we're moving all of that out. And I guess that was kind of my point, in that, guess what? It's okay if you didn't wake up this morning with a tech vision or a tech strategy. It very rarely happens like that. Often it is born, and if you could jump onto the next slide for me, Alistair, often it's born from those sort of, those problems, what I like to call sparks, those things that are there existing in your business today, whether you're a startup or a much larger organization, those things that are niggling away and causing you pain, they're causing you distraction, and you absolutely should address them, because they're probably, absolutely one causing you absolute operational problems, but confidence in your ability to do what you need to be able to do, focus, all of these areas. So giving proper time to some of those sparks. For me, it was things like failing systems. It was a lack of collaboration tool sets, and then going, right, okay, so how do I not make it look like we're just firefighting, we're just jumping from one problem to the next, and I actually have a proper strategy around this stuff. What do I actually mean when I say, I want us to focus on core products and not on operating systems? Is that where I'm talking about, SaaS first, or in my case, actually SaaS only? We would only look at tools that were SaaS-based platforms. Focus on core product. All of these things. So I ended up taking all of those sparks, those things I have, think about how do I join them up, because ultimately what I want to demonstrate to the business is I'm not just firefighting. This is all part of a larger plan. There is a vision wrapped around us being, a focus on, SaaS and collaboration and simple costs and operations and all these areas. So that they're joined up thoughts, not just firefighting. And then publishing that. I think it's really important that you get your wording out there, right? So when you've sat down and thought about, where do we ultimately want to be? What is the light on the hill that we're all heading for? And these are some of the milestones along that way. Communicating that, so everyone knows that's the case. It's all well and good that you have a vision, but unless you're telling everyone about it, it means nothing. Using it as part of your hiring process, so that when people come on board, they immediately know what they're joining. We are here to achieve this, and this is some of the things we're going to do along the way. Hope you're on board for that, because that's what we're doing. If you're not, that's absolutely fine. If you're here to be, if we're going into a SaaS only world and you're here to be a great infrastructure guy, then probably there's going to be a conflict, right? That's not what we're here to do, and that can cross into many streams of areas within the business. It's not just a tech thing; it's a multiple sort of strategy process. So you can see there that publishing a statement there around this is what we're in business for. We're to create these environments which customers can be successful, delivering value through secure, lean, automated operations. It's something you can go back to as you're making your decisions about the technology you're going to use going forward. You can reflect back on this vision, and there's also a set of principles underneath this as well. But you can look back at that vision and principles and go, are we doing the right thing? Is it aligned to what we've said we wanted to do? If it's not, we need to question whether we should be doing it or not. And if it is, great, let's push on ahead. And this helped me significantly over the years, because it gave everyone knew whilst I was doing what I was doing. I think I was probably one of the first sort of people to build things like a Chrome only contact center, for instance, where every solution was delivered through a browser. So it was a one pane of glass contact center that could operate from anywhere in the world. It didn't need to be in a building, because that's where my telephony system was. We had a security incident once in our contact center where we sent everybody home, not like what's going on today, actually. And we was able to run the contact center from people's homes. And this was back in like 2014, when cloud telephony was, let's put it, it was a bit shaky, but it worked, right? And it was because there was a plan behind it. There was a vision of being this cloud-only business, and therefore all of our engineering focus was on our core product, giving consumers that great takeaway experience that we wanted. So for me, it's super important that if today you have a bunch of problems, is think about how do we tie those together into a clearer strategy so that you, as the technology leader or wherever it is in the structure that you are, you can demonstrate to the board and your seniors, etc., that it is, you're thinking about the longer future of the problems you're going to face and ultimately where you want to get with some of these things. So if you can jump on to the next slide for me, Alice. So this is just some of the stuff that you need to keep in consideration. So be really aware of where your weaknesses are, right? It's okay to not be great at everything. I think a lot of times we focus on our weaknesses and go, I must get better at X, rather than saying, actually, I'm not very good at X, but I'm really great at Y. So why don't I continue to accentuate Y and get someone to help me with X? Right? As technologists, sometimes we're pretty poor communicators, right? We assume this stuff's really easy and everyone should just get on with it. I don't know what the problem is. And the reality is that's not the case. So why don't we get some help around communications and focus on that awesome technology we're able to create for our core product that's going to be out in the world, being used by consumers, etc. Define and publish that cloud strategy. It's really important, as I said before. Tell people why you're doing what you're doing and how you're doing it and why you're doing it. What's in it for them. Answer that question all of the time. Accept the feedback that's going to come back from that and continue to develop your vision based on that feedback. If you ask for feedback and people give it, you respond with, I heard, and this is what we're doing. And you'll be surprised at how much more feedback you start getting. When you don't close that loop, that's when it dries up, because people go, well, they're not listening to me, so why should I continue to give it? So keep developing that strategy, but always communicate it every single day. Appoint and empower a trusted person. In my experience, I've been very fortunate in that the CTOs and CIOs I've worked with over the years have absolutely put me in a position of trust and said, you know what you're doing in the space. You're the right person to be doing it. Go do it. And that allows me to, one, fail safely, and that's great, and learn. But it also means I don't feel like I'm having to prove upwards all the time. So if you're in the position on this call now, you're in the position where you can appoint that person, make them feel that, then please do. You'll see that person blossom and grow super quickly, or team, or wherever it might be. Or if you're in that position where you need that, ask for it and have that conversation in your sort of one-to-ones with your line manager and so on and so forth, because the freedom it brings to be able to go out and deliver is significant. A network of champions, and that can mean many things, right? A network of champions could be a group like this, having people you can bounce ideas off and work with within your business, external to your business. You're not a one-man show or not a one-woman show. There are many people out there that have helped, that are probably facing the same problems you're facing today. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can learn and borrow and steal and all sorts of ideas that are out there to reuse. It is rare that you'll come across something that's never been seen before. Define what excellent is. So you've got the light on the hill. You've said what that is going to be like. You've explained what the world looks like when you get there. But along the way, you need to make sure you're doing the right things, right? So think about how you're going to measure that success. If it is a SaaS only collaboration, or it is an availability thing, it's a stability, it's a security thing. What are the items you're going to have in there to measure and make sure that you are measuring them? Because constantly you'll be able to see whether you're heading in the right direction. Have you veered off the path ever so slightly and need to make a course correction, or actually has the mission changed? Because sometimes it might do, right? We're in a very fast growing space in the world, and sometimes those missions do need to be tweaked, and therefore, but you're making the decisions on the right, you're making it based on data you're collecting, right? So it's a really good thing. Like I said, they're prepared to evaluate the tool set is not just the mission, but also some of those decisions you've made early on. Well, if the mission's moved because we've changed what we want to do, then we might need to reevaluate some of that. So those are some of the key things to keep in the back of your head. And I guess that the last slide, Alistair, is kind of why I've now joined Netpremacy, is because I'm wrapping this up into what I call custom. This is my version of customer success, and I know there's many versions out there that people talk about. My version of customer success is, it's okay that not everyone knows necessarily how to go about this. So why don't we help? Why don't we be one of those people out there that can help steer these things in the right direction? If you're not great at creating a strategy, we can help with that. If you're not great at understanding the technology, the Googlers a moment ago talked about a lot of tech that is very complex and very deep, then why don't you reach out and get some help? It's okay if you don't understand it. It's not a detriment to you that this stuff sounds very confusing and very complex. The reality is the technology is very simple. It's often just a mindset and a way of thinking that needs to change, and we can help with that. We can define those measures. We can ensure that you're sweating the asset. When you buy some of this technology, it is very vast, very deep, and can do a lot more than you may have originally set out. So sweat that asset as much as possible. Don't buy tools to fill out gaps until you know that gap can't be filled by the current solution you have. So this is the customer success program that I operate in a very consultative manner. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second, because that is what I now get a huge buzz out of. I've been and done some of this stuff, and so has my team, and it's a great team that I have behind me. But it's super important that we get engaged with customers and help them, because the end result is really powerful, right? So yeah, that's it from me. I'm always around for questions. We're going to do some of that now, I think. But yeah, thanks.
Great stuff. Many thanks, Martin, and thanks also to Rich and Egbert. So just to recap on that, we've had a look under the bonnet of Google's fintech offering in the context of cloud, and then Martin has just walked us through a kind of some insight into why this is not as simple as it might seem. And I think that's been one of my takeaways as we prepared for this webinar today and listening to the guys, is that you hear people talk about cloud all the time. Are you in the cloud or are you on premise? It's almost like a sort of an A or B choice, and clearly there's a lot more to it than that. When we think about it in a fintech sense, though, fintechs are always talked about as being born in the cloud. So there's an assumption that fintechs are cloud-based businesses, and I guess probably a lot of us are guilty of thinking that just means loads of stuff works really efficiently. I think I'm going to start with a few questions, and I encourage everyone to chip in on the Q&A and ask anything you want to. I'll filter them through to the appropriate person. But Rich, if we could just ask you something. So fintechs are born in the cloud, as I just said. Obviously, there are some areas they can make big gains on from the content of your presentation and also from Martin's. What are those areas where you see fintechs sort of make the biggest gains by sort of refining the way they're adopting cloud and the way they're engaging with cloud?
Yeah, good question. So I guess it's what I mentioned in my presentation is it's all about sort of data. I think that's kind of where we see Google especially leading the sort of way with regards to being a cloud provider. I always say with a lot of our customers that sort of VMs and infrastructure are in a sense commoditized now. Infrastructure is getting to a point where you can just spin up a cloud in it somewhere and make it secure, things like that. I think where we go beyond is what we do with the data that you put on Google, and with regards to AI, machine learning. I think our capabilities in that space are kind of second to none. And I also think a lot of fintechs choose to go with Google because we can access other parts of Google that maybe other cloud providers aren't able to offer. So we have obviously access to things like YouTube and Google Ads, and we can create a really powerful sort of offering between all of the Google products if we do that. So does that answer your question, Julian?
Yeah, it does. It does. And just a follow-up point. A lot of the logos on the slides were pretty well-known fintechs. You've got some kind of real shining lights of the fintech sector in your client base, which is no surprise. Maybe you could say a bit about the smaller firms though, and how you sort of work with some of the startups and earlier stage businesses.
Sure. So there's a lot of things that we're doing in this space. Obviously, we have kind of account teams across all sort of SMB, startup, all the way up to enterprise. And I think what we're focusing on, myself and Egbert, is the fact that we're investing in the companies of the future. So even though it's currently a startup, take Revolut for an example. Those guys were just a few years ago, a startup based in Level 39 in London, and now have their own offices in Canary Wharf, and obviously one of the most valuable sort of fintechs in the market at the moment. And I think so the support that we offer is essentially the same whether you're a startup, Revolut, startup sort of that level, or if you're a scale up or an enterprise. We have account teams specifically working across all of these sort of areas. And then obviously we have these Google Cloud for Startups type offerings, which if you can search for on Google, there's lots of things there. We have sort of best in practice sessions where we get technical customer engineers who can jump on calls with customers just like this, or post-COVID times we'll be able to meet in person and really help you through. But I guess the main point I want to make around this, going on a bit, is with our partner network, right? So the likes of Netpremacy and other partners, we look to try and scale our sort of technical resources and actual ability to, hands on keyboard help with, whether it is with a HSBC or a startup. We try and get these specialist partners with their knowledge to come in and help deploy the technologies that we're providing. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Martin, one question for you, and then I'm going to go to some of the Q&As that are coming through on the chat. Please do chip in with any questions, guys, if you've got any. I guess, Martin, a lot of the themes of what you were talking about were making a stack of sense. You don't just dive into these projects. It's not a sort of fire, a quick decision. Figure out your strategy, where you're going, and then align everything to that, and then you'll make better decisions along the way. I guess it wouldn't be a webinar at the moment if we didn't mention the COVID situation. Mm-hmm. And what do you see as the impacts on what we're talking about today, and what sort of the role that companies like Google are going to play coming out of this?
So I think for most, like I've seen businesses that a year ago would have said, no, we're this is the building we're in, this is where our systems are, this is how we operate, and we're not seeing that changing in the future. And and it's a shame it's taken a situation like this, where obviously it's horrendous. But I think the future will be people having that much more sort of open mind to the ability to work. We used to say it all the time, work from any device, anywhere, and it used to be a bit of a mantra and a flag we'd fly, and people would yeah, sure, but still I need that VPN tunnel, I need that file server, and I need all these things. And I think the recent sort of last 10 weeks has shown that actually a lot of businesses have not only managed to do this, but also then thrive in doing it. The collaboration between teams has gone significantly up, even within our own businesses, Netpremacy, right? Actually, this has made us think about working together more than just taking for granted that they were in the office. So I think in the future, we'll see more of a blended model of that kind of remote versus office, because I think we'll choose to go to places to work together on a specific topic or project, but then be very relaxed about the ability that, we can work from anywhere. And even that means extending the ability to hire, right? So actually saying, we might be a Leeds-based business, but we could hire that super hot engineer who's based out in Barcelona because the absolute superstar, and we are comfortable with them working remotely, right? Because we can have the collaboration, we can have the measures in place, we can ensure that that person's working well. So I think it's probably been a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of people that thought this was never going to be a workable situation, and we can certainly help people realize that as well. That's my thoughts.
Great. Cool, many thanks. Okay, so there's a couple of questions along a similar theme. Alistair, these might be best starting with you, but Rich and Egbert might want to part answer them as well. So I'm just going to read both of them out, and then I think they could be covered in the same point. Firstly, from Vishal Mehta, what's the key technical advantage of using Google Cloud in FinTech versus other cloud providers like AWS and Azure, which have larger share in the UK as well as in FinTech? And a related question from Dan Rajkumar. Migrating from dedicated servers to AWS took a significant investment. Are there some non-tech incentives for fintechs to migrate to Google Cloud?
Yeah, great question. And I think I can take the first part of that, and I might have to hand over to Rich and Egbert for the second part. But I also think we kind of alluded to it during the session, and Rich kind of mentioned infrastructure is becoming more of a commodity. I think where Google really come into their own from a tech perspective is on the data warehousing and sort of the analytics side, as well as what they're doing on an AI and an ML side. So if we take not necessarily a specific fintech example, but actually one that we have referred to kind of in this. So we take Just Eat, for example. Just Eat are crunching petabytes of data, understanding their customer base, understanding sort of frequent orders, and opening up new restaurants, looking for new clients based on petabytes of data they've gathered from sort of their customer base. I think the speed to actually query something and get an answer out very, very quickly is where Google's coming into its own. And you've kind of seen the progression of where the software is going as well, and the specific tools they're building around fintech and sort of the financial space. I think that innovation and that long-term view is what you get from Google. I think they are constantly trying to disrupt what is out there. They're not trying to replicate what's already there. They're trying to be new, innovative, and sort of create these different ways of working. And that's really the sort of tech advantage we see as a partner, and why we partner with them so closely. And in fact, they're the only cloud provider we actually partner with, is because of that innovation, that sort of foresight, and that constant, they're almost constantly challenging the status quo with the software and really trying to get the most out of it, but provide some of those like most innovative solutions. I think that's really the technical strength of Google. The second part, I might have to hand over to Rich and Egbert to pick up.
So I think the question was around going from on-prem to AWS took significant investment. Is Google doing anything in this space? Is that right, Julian?
Yeah, that's right. There's sort of apart from all the tech advantages of making a switch to Google, are there any other non-technical incentives?
Absolutely. So it's completely taken on a case-by-case basis, right? So the reason that we kind of work with another reason that we work with some of our partners is that they can significantly help this sort of move from a technical perspective. But sort of from a non-technical perspective, I think what a lot of our customers are finding is when they migrate from, for example, on-prem, you have obviously sustained use discounts and commit use discounts using Google, which means that your bill can be significantly reduced ongoing into sort of future. And based on that is basically, the more you use Google Cloud, the more you get discounts. So it's called sustained use discounts. And then you can also commit to using specific machines, which will also give you further discounts. And that can provide significant non-tech incentives, which I think sort of leaning towards financial incentives to move across to GCP.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to investigate that further, would they talk to you onto Netpremacy?
Either or both. Yeah. So we're Alistair and I are constantly sort of in contact about this. So please reach out if you want to talk about the specific use case, and we can have a discussion for sure.
Cool. Okay. Right. I'm going to move on because we've got some other questions coming through. Martin, I think this is one for you from Usman Shahid. What part to play does access to talent have in regards to choosing Google Cloud or any cloud provider? London-focused businesses will have more access to talent than is Google Cloud orientated than any other parts of the of the country. I think is really the point. So is there a focus of the talent in this field around London, or is there more of a regional spread than people might assume?
I think in the beginning, I would have said it's a very, the DevOps culture kind of was born into London, right? And it was very much the sort of the tech startups in London were snatching up as many of the, AWS, Google, Azure type DevOps individuals very quickly. This has been the case for the last sort of 10 years, I would say. That's been the case. But I mean, if you look at businesses like OVO springs to mind, Just Eat, who branched out into Bristol, other companies now starting up, other big offices in other areas. It's catching up very quickly. So, and also the thing we just spoke about, remote working, right? Being able to hire someone who's effectively based anywhere. So absolutely, I think in the old day, if you go back 5-6 years ago, finding people that were, cloud DevOps types individuals would have been very London centric. Is that the case today? I don't believe so. I think, we've seen some great tech companies I know that exist in Leeds and Bristol and other places that will have these great networks of people. The big universities now are the people that are coming out of there are going straight into these roles. It is, if I had my time again, I would absolutely be a DevOps engineer, because they are the rock stars of tech right now. So go out and snatch them up as quick as you can. But I think it is a lot easier than what it was, certainly.
Okay, that's good to hear. And I suppose, Alistair, just following on from that, I mean, a lot of the audience that are listening today are based in the North. What have you observed in the North in general in terms of the growth of fintech from your work here?
I think, and after attending quite a few Fintech North events and a few of the webinars as well, I think you can see there's an increase in sort of companies and startups coming from the North, and the North is really beginning to come into its own from an innovation and sort of tech hub. And that's, like I mentioned at the start of this, something we're quite passionate about pushing as well and really helping thrive. Part of the sort of methodology around putting this webinar together today was to connect Google to that side of the North, actually bring them in and sort of help that innovation thrive. And I actually think a lot of the network is already there, to be honest. I think Fintech North have done a great job of finding all the sort of tech and innovation companies around. So from the Northeast, from the Northwest, etc. And I see our role is really helping connect it to sort of the big provider such as Google. But personally, from my point of view, after attending the first event, you can see the amount of companies that are actually here in the North really challenging. And one of the great things I like from the events is almost that mini pitch process some of the guys had to go through a couple of months ago. I think it was in January I attended, where they have to pitch their business, and some of the solutions that they are providing are really solving everyday problems. And it's great to see that coming from sort of the Northeast, the Northwest, Leeds in particular. And I think you take Leeds Digital Festival into account as well. That's something that's only growing. So I think the North is getting stronger and stronger and is really beginning to challenge the sort of London-based businesses and actually beginning to sort of come up on par, which is great to see. And also great to be involved in from our side as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, agreed. And I think this sort of devolution is going to be a hot topic over the next, the next sort of 12 to 18 months for sure. Martin, another question for you. Not sure. It's from Carly Gulliver. Hi, Carly. Any tips on how to effectively communicate your vision to your team so that it becomes part of the team's DNA in terms of strategy and execution? Yeah, sure. So firstly, why not create it with them? So that's the first thing. It doesn't have to be you. It doesn't have to be just you on your own. If you already have a vision you're feeling very passionate about, sense check it with them. So literally do an offsite, or in our case, do a video call with them currently. But spend some time with them talking about the why you think the way you think, and listen to that feedback again and answer it, and then use it all of the time. So when I'm at Netpremacy, anytime I'm asked to do a sort of an all hands discussion, one of my first slides is my vision, and I will refer to it constantly because I want people to know it's not something I did and then I put it on a slide and then I never went back to it and therefore truly didn't believe in it. It's there every time I go and do some of these sessions because I want people to know the decisions I'm making are based on that thing I've talked about, and I'll go back to it again and say, look, remember I said this is why I'm doing this. So every time you get an opportunity to stand up in front of a team, and then say in the hiring process, use it so people know what they're joining. That's how I sort of keep just hammering in at home that I'm not just jumping from one thing to the next. It's all part of a larger plan that I have. So yeah, just every time you get an opportunity to use it, stick it in there, right? People will know, oh yeah, that's that thing. Okay, good stuff. Well, hopefully that was helpful, Carly. I'm sure Martin will be happy to talk about that more if you wanted to. I'm easy to find on LinkedIn and such. Find me and ask. It's absolutely fine. Great stuff. Okay, we've only got a few minutes left. There's there's one more question come through that's a more technical question. I'll try and decipher it with my non-technical hat on. I guess this is going to be for Rich or Egbert. Do you incorporate infrastructure as a service and platform as a service additionally to software as a service?
Me or you, Egbert?
I can do that. Okay. Yeah, we do. So we look at Google Cloud Platform and our solutions. We actually got all three. So our SaaS solutions is, for example, G Suite, we're using right now with Hangouts. Then we've got our infrastructure service, which is the primary compute engine and lift and ships of VMs. And then we got platform service where you can see, for example, our AutoML tools that we have. We can like customize and kind of manipulate how the tools are integrated and how the ML engine is basically being used. So we have all three, depending on use case and what you want to achieve. You can go to the website. And actually, our first tool from Story was App Engine. It's actually a platform service solution. And we thought it was a bit too advanced for the market. So we actually went back down to infrastructure service. And now we're back full circle again. But yeah, we got all three. Just go to the website and have a look. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Cool. Okay. Right. I'm going to ask all of you guys the next question. And I'm going to, just to kind of close things out, there's 2 points here. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going to struggle to pronounce this name. Chidibe Ojiki, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, asked, what is the best go-to market for a fintech startup in frontier markets? But let's frame that within a broader question to all of you, which is, if you could give one piece of advice to a fintech at the start of their journey, what would it be? Now, there's probably quite a lot of people thinking about starting businesses at the moment. These sort of situations do tend to give birth to some interesting companies. So, Rich, let's start with you. What would you say?
So, one of the reasons I joined Google in the first place was I kind of believed in that whole ethos of the way they work. And I think that one of the things that struck home with me, and without sort of drinking the Kool-Aid too much, one of their main sayings is focus on the user and all else will follow. So if you really think about the user and how they react and what they need, I think you will in the end get to where you want to be, because I think that's just basically what I would say is just focus on the user and be customer obsessed, really, is what I would say.
Okay. Egbert, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, actually, Rich has got a great point of focus on the user. I think that's the primary vision that startups have. Following to that, also to the community. So no matter where you are as a fintech, the UK, Asia, or let's say Africa, and emerging market, frontier markets, try to look at the community that you have once a startup, but also as a fintech. I'm relatively new to fintech, only 6 months in, but what I found is it's a very strong community. A lot of the first backgrounds from banking, from app development, for consultancy, and they're all very transparent and willing to help each other. So definitely try to leverage that as much as possible. That's my main recommendation. Great.
Okay. Thank you, Martin. What bit of advice would you give to a new fintech?
I'll give two, because I have to give two. The first one is enjoy it, because I felt like I had a 40-year career at Just Eat, over 7 years, with an IPO and a 100 to 3,000 people growth, and just also crazy things that happened in all of that. So I don't know what you're part of today, but who knows where it could go. So make sure you blooming well enjoy it, because there probably won't be many others along the line. So yeah, spend some time enjoying it, definitely. And the other one would be brilliant basics, right? If you can do those first things right, especially when it comes to cloud. There's a lot of people that, like you say in the beginning, just think cloud is a data center in the sky, and yes, it can be VMware that someone else is running for you, but I would argue you're probably not doing it right. So think about, let's focus on brilliant basics first of all: elastic compute, monitoring and alerting, health checking, all of these things that will make your life in the future that much easier to deal with. So absolutely, you should be in the cloud. There's no two ways about it. But there are many ways to get there, and there is a right way, and there are many, many wrong ways. So get some help, understand what you're not good at, and get help. And keep razor focus. Why are you in business? You're in business to deliver something. Focus on that. Get help to do everything else. That's my, there you go. It's probably about 4 things now, I'm afraid.
Okay. Well, we're kind of at time. I'm going to hand back to Alistair in a second. I just want to say thanks to everyone for speaking. So Rich, Martin, Egbert, many thanks for your time and your expertise and knowledge today. Thank you to everybody who's joined. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you're listening to this on playback, then I hope you've enjoyed it in that sense as well. Plenty more Fintech North events coming up. We'll be promoting them on the website as usual. Alistair, do you just want to close things out from a Netpremacy perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I'd just like to start off by saying thanks very much to Julian for kind of helping us bring this together. Also, big thanks to Rich, Egbert, and Martin for speaking. Hopefully, sort of the words that they said resonate with everyone and sort of pass on some advice. To kind of tail it off, I'd like to cover it off with a couple of next steps, kind of what comes from a Netpremacy point of view. I think similar to Fintech North and Julian, we'll be sending a little feedback form around for everyone. So we're planning on doing more of these, more webinars, even some face-to-face, hopefully when we get a chance. So we value everyone's feedback. It's great to kind of know what worked, what didn't, what else you'd like to see as well. This is one part of what we do at Netpremacy, but there's a lot more. So if there's anything else you'd like to see, sort of get in touch, and happy to do that. There were a couple of questions in there specific to sort of Google and some of the further offerings. Reach out to myself, more than happy to involve Rich and Egbert and connect the wider Google community to answer those off. But the final piece I would say is we're going to be running a lot more of these. So we've actually got one tomorrow on retail and sort of how the wider Google product set helps in retail. If that's an interest of yours, hop in, have a look at that. But this is the first of many we're going to do with Fintech North. So watch out for us on their event schedule. We'll be doing a lot more, and hopefully we'll be able to do one face-to-face in a couple of months' time and welcome everyone to our office in Leeds. And you can finally be the judge of whether we are more Google than Google. But I'd also like to say thanks everyone for attending. Hopefully you found it worthwhile, and look forward to seeing you on more over the next couple of weeks and months.